Tyler gathered the workers in front of the glass-walled conference room. 40 witnesses. He'd timed this for the shift change, making sure both crews saw what happened next. "Stan, I need you to understand something." He adjusted his rimless glasses, and his voice carried across the factory floor. Rehearsed and deliberate. "This company is moving into the 21st century, and that requires real leadership. Not legacy workforce models or outdated management styles." The CNC machines sat idle behind us. Danny stood near the back with his phone out, recording. He caught my eye for half a second. We'd talked last night. A few of the older guys exchanged glances, but the newer workers shifted their weight, eyes down. "Clean out your desk, old man. This factory needs real leadership." Tyler crossed his arms. I checked my watch. 10:17 a.m. 33 years, 4 months, and 11 days since we started this company. "There's a shareholder meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon," I said. "You should probably attend." Tyler laughed. "What shareholder meeting?" "I run this company now." Filed the emergency meeting notice with the Ohio Secretary of State at 9:47 this morning. Case number 2024, EMS 4471, breach of fiduciary duty by a non-shareholder officer. I'd known this was coming. Filed the paperwork before Tyler even called the meeting. "Non-shareholder?" His voice went up half an octave. "My grandfather built this company." I pulled the folded certificate from my shirt pocket. The paper was soft at the folds, yellowed at the edges. Both signatures clear under the state filing stamp from September 1985. We started 50-50 in 1985. I unfolded it so he could see the numbers. "I own 68% now. You just fired your boss in front of 40 witnesses." Tyler's hand went to his collar. His fingers fumbled with the button. The rimless glasses slipped down his nose.
"Before the story continues, have you subscribed yet? Let's go."
I watched my father lose everything in 1982. The steel plant gave him 2 weeks' notice after 23 years on the floor. He came home on a Tuesday afternoon when he should have been working second shift, and I knew something had broken before he said a word. The house went 4 months later. Bank foreclosure. I was 8 years old, carrying boxes to a borrowed pickup truck. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway. Her shoulders shook, but no sound came out. That's when I learned the rule. Work hard your whole life and still end up with nothing if someone else owns what you build. I joined the Army at 18, 8 years as a logistics sergeant. I learned to track 15,000 items across 4 supply chains, using nothing but handwritten ledgers and carbon copies. Numbers don't lie if you write them down correctly. I met Jim Garrison in 1985 at a manufacturing trade show in Cleveland. He had aerospace sales connections and $150,000 in capital. I had technical expertise and the kind of work ethic you develop when you've watched your family lose a house. We shook hands on a 50-50 partnership that September. Precision tool and die, specializing in components that required tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch. Jim hired Rita Feldman to draft the partnership agreement. She was 35 then, working out of a 3-room practice downtown. Her father had been a union steward at a Cleveland parts plant for 30 years, and she understood what it meant when working-class guys tried to build something permanent. We sat in her conference room on a Thursday afternoon, Jim and I on one side of the table, Rita on the other, with a yellow legal pad and the same metal filing system her father had used. "Section 7 covers compensation," she said, flipping through her notes. "Equal salaries, equal bonuses, calculated quarterly based on net profit. Jim nodded. He was 42, 10 years older than me, with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up with enough. Bonuses can be distributed as cash or converted to equity shares, Rita continued. She looked at me when she said it. Not at Jim. Book value formula recalculated annually by your external accountant. Why would anyone convert to shares instead of taking cash? Jim asked. Rita's pen stopped moving. Long-term thinking. Someone might decide ownership is worth more than spending money. I met her eyes across the table. Sounds fair to me, Jim said. Stan, equal opportunity for both partners, I said. Rita drafted Section 7, with language that couldn't be challenged. Either partner could convert any bonus to equity at the formula price. No restrictions, no limits, no approval required beyond the standard board documentation. We signed on September 23, 1985. I still have the photograph from that day. Jim and I shaking hands in front of the empty factory building, both wearing work shirts and boots. The first quarterly bonus came in December. Net profit hit $112,000 after we landed a contract with a medical device manufacturer. Jim and I each qualified for $8,400. Jim took cash. Christmas shopping, he said. His wife wanted new furniture. I filed the conversion paperwork on December 28. Rita processed it the same day, filing the stock transfer certificate with the state on January 15, 1986. Jim signed the transfer approval. Same day Rita filed the paperwork. He never mentioned it. I did the same thing in March 1986 and June and September. By the end of our second year, I owned 53. Jim had 46% and $67,200 more in his bank account than I did. He bought a boat that summer, 24-foot cabin cruiser for Lake Erie weekends. Named it Second Wind, kept it at Edgewater Marina, where the slip fees cost more than my truck payment. I bought a 987 Ford F-150 and have driven it ever since. The pattern held for 30 years. Every quarter, the external accountant calculated our bonuses. Every quarter, Jim took cash and I converted to shares. Every quarter, Rita filed the transfer certificate with the state within 30 days. Jim's family bought vacation homes. I bought koi fish. I started breeding championship koi in 1992. Dug the pond system myself over 6 months, 3 connected pools with professional filtration and temperature control. I spent $32,000 on that pond system, more than Jim paid for his boat. People thought I was crazy, spending money on fish instead of vacations or new trucks. Championship bloodlines take 15 years of selective breeding. Jim bought his boat the same year I started the first pond. By 2003, my Kohaku was worth $28,000. His boat needed a new engine. You don't get championship bloodlines in one generation. You select for color, pattern, body shape. You breed the best to the best and wait 3 years to see if the genetics hold. Then you do it again and again. My Kohaku won regional competition in 2003, 11 years of selective breeding. A fish worth $28,000 to the right buyer. I never sold it, just like I never sold my shares. Every Sunday morning, I tested the pond water, ammonia, nitrite levels. I kept a log in a waterproof notebook, tracking chemistry changes and feeding patterns. Same discipline I used for the stock transfer certificates. Every conversion documented, filed, verified. Jim never asked about the cumulative effect, never pulled the corporate filings to see how the numbers had shifted. His family assumed 50-50 meant 50-50 forever. Jim died 3 years ago. Heart attack at 67 while shoveling snow from his driveway in February. His will granted Tyler operational authority over manufacturing operations. The language was specific: personnel decisions, equipment purchases, production scheduling. The Garrison family read that and assumed Tyler inherited ownership. Nobody checked the Ohio Secretary of State corporate filings. Nobody called Rita to ask about the stock certificates she'd been filing for 3 decades. If they had, they would have found 100 quarterly transfers. They would have seen my ownership climb from 50% to 68%, while the Garrison family stake dropped to 31%. They would have understood that Jim's family took $4.7 million in cash distributions. Boats and vacation homes and new cars. I converted $4.7 million to shares now worth $21 million at current valuation. But they didn't check. They assumed authority meant ownership, and they assumed I was too simple to understand the difference. Tyler showed up 6 months after Jim's funeral with his mid-tier MBA and consulting firm polish. 26 years old, wearing rimless glasses and Italian loafers. He talked about optimization and efficiency, about eliminating legacy workforce models. He never asked who owned the company he thought he was running. I fed my koi every Sunday at 6. Summer mornings, the water threw mist that smelled like earth and algae. The championship kohaku surfaced before my shadow crossed the pond edge. It was about watching what happens when you don't touch something for 15 years. Water chemistry that stays balanced. Genetics that improve each generation. Ownership percentage that climbs from 50 to 68. Jim used to ask why I bothered with the fish, why I spent weekends testing water instead of taking the boat out with him. Maybe I did think too much about the long game. But long-term thinking meant I owned 68% of a company worth $40 million in annual revenue, and Tyler owned nothing except his grandfather's assumption that authority and ownership were the same thing. Rita called me the night before Tyler's termination speech. She'd heard from Danny that something was coming. "You ready?" she asked, filing the emergency meeting notice tomorrow morning. I pulled the certificates from the vault, all 120 transfers, chronological order. I hung up and walked out to the pond. The kohaku glided through water I'd tested that morning. Perfect pee. Perfect temperature. 30 years of disciplined choices. Every bonus converted, every certificate filed, every quarterly transfer documented with the same precision I used for water chemistry and breeding records. Tyler thought he was firing an old factory guy who didn't understand corporate structure. He had no idea he was terminating his own boss in front of 40 witnesses who'd known the truth for years. I filed the emergency meeting notice with the Ohio Secretary of State at 9,047 that morning. Case number 2024. EMS 4471. Breach of fiduciary duty by a non-shareholder officer. By the time Tyler called his meeting at 10,017, the paperwork was already stamped and registered. 3 months earlier, Tyler had walked into his first management meeting wearing a blazer and Italian loafers. 26 years old, 3 months at a consulting firm that billed by the PowerPoint slide. He sat at the head of the conference table, not beside me where Jim used to sit, but at the head, like the choice was unconscious. The conference room glass showed the factory floor. CNC machines hummed through the walls. Tyler's laptop fan whirred. Tyler turned his screen around. 12 manual machines highlighted in red. 4 new CNC units in green. The spreadsheet promised 48% headcount reduction. We're maintaining 12 manual machines that could be replaced with 4 additional CNC units. That would allow us to reduce operator headcount by 48% while increasing output 17%. I set down my coffee. The ceramic mug made a small sound against the wood table. Which 12 machines? The manual lathes and the 3 mills in Bay. 4. Those handle the medical device components, the titanium work that requires D001-inch tolerances. Tyler nodded. Why automation makes sense? Human error is the primary cause of scrap rates. The scrap rate on those machines is %. Our CNC units run at % because titanium work requires constant monitoring for tool wear. The operators catch tool wear at 0.003 deviation. The automated systems don't register problems until 0.012. That's a training issue, Tyler said. Better software calibration. Danny's pen stopped mid-word. He set it down carefully, aligned it with the edge of his notepad. The FAA certification requires human verification at 6 checkpoints during titanium machining, I said. That's federal regulation for aerospace components. We can document the automated checkpoints. Tyler closed his laptop. I appreciate the historical context, Stan, but we need to move past legacy workforce models. He said my name, the way you'd address a maintenance worker who'd wandered into the wrong meeting. Danny looked at me. I shook my head once. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Tyler had 17 more slides about optimization and efficiency gains. I took notes on the yellow legal pad I'd used for 33 years. That afternoon, Tyler walked the factory floor with a consultant wearing a hard hat that had never seen actual work. They stopped at Bay 4, where Carlos was running the manual lathe on a titanium component for a medical implant manufacturer. Carlos had been with us for 19 years. He could hear when the cutting tool needed replacement, adjust feed rates by sound alone. Tyler pointed at the equipment while the consultant took photographs. They didn't speak to Carlos, didn't ask how the process worked or why certain steps required manual control. The glass walls showed the whole floor. Tyler and his consultant stopped at Bay 4, where Carlos ran the manual lathe. Tyler gestured at the CNC machines. I added the timestamp to my yellow notepad. 2:47 p.m. Equipment proposal discussion. Danny appeared in my doorway. He asked me who has final approval on equipment purchases. Danny said, "What did you tell him? That all capital expenditures over 50,000 need board authorization. Didn't mention the board is just you and the Garrison family shares. Good." Danny leaned against the doorframe. He didn't say anything for 10 seconds. You know what he's planning. Yeah, I said. 6 weeks into Tyler's tenure, I was at my desk when the third shift supervisor called at 11 p.m. asking why the quality checkpoints weren't accepting manual entries anymore. Tyler installed new software, he said. Says we need to use tablets for all documentation. Which components? Everything, including the aerospace work. I drove to the factory. Third shift was running a batch of aluminum components for a commercial aircraft manufacturer. I clicked through the software interface. No print function. No export to PDF. The aerospace manufacturer's audit clause required signatures in ink on paper. I spent 2 hours working with IT to create a parallel documentation system. paper forms alongside the digital logging. By the time I left, it was 1:30 a.m. Tyler sent an email at 8 the next morning asking why we were maintaining duplicate quality systems. I replied with the FAA regulation number and a copy of the aerospace contract clause requiring paper audit trails. He responded, "We'll address this in the next management meeting. We need to move past outdated compliance interpretations." By September, Tyler had presented his optimization analysis. Wednesday morning, with 43 slides and a consultant from his former firm who charged $800 per hour, the analysis targeted 12 workers, all of them with 15 to 25 years of experience, all of them running the manual equipment or the specialized CNC programs that required judgment calls. Tyler turned his screen around. The total labor cost for these positions is $1.2 million annually. Automation systems can replace the functionality at a one-time capital cost of $600,000 with ongoing maintenance of $90,000 per year. The consultant advanced to a slide showing 5-year cost savings projections. That's a 48% reduction in operational expenses for the machining department. Tyler said. Danny sat across from me. His jaw muscles were tight. What about the aerospace contracts? I asked. The automation includes quality verification systems that exceed current manual inspection capabilities. The contracts require relationships with specific certified operators. We list those workers by name in our quality management submissions. Tyler adjusted his glasses. We'll update the submissions. The aircraft manufacturer has used Carlos for titanium work for 12 years. They specify him personally in the engineering change orders. Then we'll need to educate them about the advantages of automated systems. I looked at the consultant. He watched Tyler, not me. You planning to tell Boeing they're wrong about requiring human judgment on flight-critical components? Tyler's face flushed. This is the kind of resistance to modernization that's holding us back. The consultant's analysis is based on industry best practices. Industry best practices for automotive parts, manufacturing. Our aerospace work requires different approaches. We're not running a museum, Stan. Tyler closed his laptop. Either we modernize or we become obsolete. The meeting ended without resolution. The consultant left to catch a flight back to Chicago. Tyler stayed in the conference room making phone calls about automation vendors. I went to my office and pulled the partnership agreement from my filing cabinet. Section 7. Covered Equity Compensation. Section 12. Covered Operational Authority. That night, I called Rita. He's going to force this, I said. The equipment elimination? That? And he started talking about diverting the capital equipment budget to marketing consultants. $200,000 allocated for new precision grinding equipment. He wants to spend it on rebranding. Rita was quiet for 10 seconds. That's breach of fiduciary duty, she said. Using funds designated for necessary capital improvements on discretionary marketing. I know. You want to invoke the emergency shareholder provision? I looked at the 1985 photograph on my desk. Jim and I shaking hands in front of the empty building. Not yet. Let him try to implement it. I need documentation of actual harm, not just proposed changes. Don't wait too long, Rita said. The more damage he does, the harder recovery becomes. I hung up and walked out to the pond. The October air was cold enough that the koi stayed near the bottom. The championship kohaku surfaced when my shadow crossed the water. I'd been feeding this fish for 11 years. bred from bloodlines I'd selected over 2 decades. Tyler had been here 3 months and thought he understood how to run a factory. Friday morning, Michelle Tran arrived. Tyler had hired her to audit our financial systems and identify cost reduction opportunities. Independent CPA with a reputation for finding inefficiencies. She set up in the small conference room, laptop. 3 years of printed financial records in chronological stacks, color-coded sticky notes on the corporate structure documents. I was at my desk when Tyler stopped by at 4 p.m. Michelle found some irregularities in the equity distribution, he said. What kind of irregularities? Stock transfers that weren't properly documented in the management summaries. She's still reviewing the details, but it looks like there were bonus conversions that should have been recorded differently. The conversions were all filed with the state, I said. Rita handled the documentation. Tyler waved his hand. I'm sure it's just accounting cleanup. Michelle will have a full report Monday. He left before I could explain that every conversion had been documented according to the partnership agreement he'd apparently never read. I found Michelle in the conference room an hour later. She closed her laptop when I appeared in the doorway. Her hand stayed on the lid. You discovered something, I said. She looked up. The ownership structure isn't what the family thinks it is. No. You own 68% of the company. Correct. She stood. Tyler asked me to find cost savings. I did standard due diligence reviewing corporate structure. He thinks the irregularities mean you took unauthorized bonuses. All the conversions were authorized under Section 7 of the partnership agreement. I know. I reviewed the original filing. She packed her laptop into her bag. I told him he should look at the equity distribution carefully. He said it was probably just paperwork issues from the early years. Thank you for being thorough. She paused at the door. I do good work. That means telling clients what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Tyler didn't want to hear it. Monday morning, Tyler sent an email announcing the reallocation of the capital equipment budget to marketing initiatives. $200,000 diverted from machinery maintenance to brand consultants. Subject: capital budget reallocation. Body: effective immediately. Q4 equipment funds $200,000 redirected to brand optimization consultants for attached proposal. I forwarded the email to Rita with one line. File the emergency shareholder meeting notice. She called back 15 minutes later. You're sure? He just committed breach of fiduciary duty in writing. I'll have it filed by 10 a.m. And Leonard, I'm pulling all 120 certificates from the vault. Chronological order, just like you'll need them. I hung up and looked at my yellow notepad. 3 months of documentation, every overridden decision, every dismissed safety concern, every instance of referring to me as the operations guy instead of partner. The manual equipment Tyler wanted to eliminate, the workers he planned to fire, the capital budget he'd just diverted, all of it documented, all of it building toward this moment. Tyler walked past my office at 9:15, phone pressed to his ear, talking about optimization metrics. He had no idea what was coming in 90 minutes. Tyler gathered the workers in front of the glass-walled conference room. 40 witnesses, both shifts. He'd timed this for the shift change, making sure both crews saw what happened next. Stan, I need you to understand something. He adjusted his rimless glasses, and his voice carried across the factory floor, each word spaced with the timing of a prepared speech. This company is moving into the 21st century, And that requires real leadership, not legacy workforce models or outdated management styles. The CNC machines sat idle behind us. Danny stood near the back with his phone out, recording. He caught my eye for half a second. We'd talked last night. A few of the older guys exchanged glances, but the newer workers shifted their weight, eyes down. Clean out your desk, old man. This factory needs real leadership. Tyler crossed his arms. I checked my watch. 10:17 a.m. 3.5 hours until the meeting started. There's a shareholder meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon, I said. You should probably attend. Tyler laughed. The sound bounced off the conference room glass. What shareholder meeting? I run this company now. Filed the emergency meeting notice with the Ohio Secretary of State at 9:47 this morning. Case number 2024. 4471. Breach of fiduciary duty by a non-shareholder officer. His smile froze. 3 seconds passed. The corners of his mouth twitched downward. Non-shareholder? The baritone he'd used for the termination speech climbed half an octave. My grandfather built this company. I pulled the folded document from my shirt pocket. The filing confirmation. I unfolded it once, then handed it to him. That's the filing confirmation. State received it at 9:47 a.m. Tyler's fingers fumbled with the paper. He read the first line, then looked up at me. You can't just call a shareholder meeting. Section 12 of the partnership agreement. Emergency meetings require 48 hours notice for standard business. Immediate notice is permitted when fiduciary breach is documented. Color rushed up from his collar. The flesh above his tie darkened to brick red. What fiduciary breach? The $200,000 budget reallocation you authorized Friday. Capital equipment funds diverted to marketing consultants without board approval. Danny's phone stayed steady at chest height, angle capturing both of us. The workers behind him hadn't moved. The silence pressed against my eardrums like the factory had been vacuum sealed. Tyler's hand went to his collar. He tugged at the button. That was operational authority. My grandfather's will gave me control over manufacturing decisions. Your grandfather's will gave you operational authority, not ownership. I pulled the stock certificate from my wallet. The paper had gone soft at the folds, yellowed at the edges. Both signatures clear under the state filing stamp, September 23, 1985. Tyler's fingers fumbled with the filing notice. I unfolded the certificate so he could see the numbers. We started 50-50 in 1985. I pointed to the percentages. James Garrison Sr., 50%. Stanley Novak, 50%. That's what your grandfather and I agreed to. Tyler stared at the certificate. His Apple Watch buzzed. He ignored it. I don't understand what you're trying to prove, he said. I own 68% of this company now. You just fired your boss in front of 40 witnesses. His skin went from flushed to pale in the time it took him to read 2 lines. The brick red faded to ash. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not possible. I folded the certificate and returned it to my wallet. The leather was warm against my palm. Rita Feldman has all 120 quarterly stock transfer certificates in chronological order, filed with the state within 30 days of each conversion. Your grandfather signed every single approval. Tyler's fingers went to his glasses. He pushed them up his nose, then adjusted them again 5 seconds later. The lenses caught the fluorescent light. This is some kind of accounting error. Michelle said there were irregularities, but she said it was documentation issues, not actual ownership changes. Michelle told you to review the equity distribution carefully. You dismissed it as paperwork cleanup. His phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, looked at the screen, then looked back at me. I need to call my attorney. The meeting starts at 2 o'clock. Conference room. Rita will be there as corporate secretary. Michelle agreed to serve as independent observer to verify vote legitimacy. I checked my watch again. 87 minutes from now. Tyler's thumb moved across his phone screen twice before he managed to tap the right contact. He brought it to his ear. His hand shook enough that I could see it from 6 feet away. "James, it's Tyler. I need you to..." He stopped, listened. His jaw muscles bunched. The tendon in his neck stood out like wire. "No, I understand you're in court, but this is urgent. Stan is claiming he owns 68% of the company, and he's filed some kind of emergency shareholder meeting for today at 2. I turned and walked toward my office. The workers parted without me asking. Their boots scraped against concrete. Someone's radio crackled with static. "Stan, wait. You need to explain this." I didn't stop. My office door was 15 steps away. 12 steps. 9. "Stan, I'm talking to you." You can't just walk away from a conversation. 6 steps. 3. Tyler's voice rose behind me. I said, "Stop." I reached my office door and went inside. The metal latch clicked. Through the window, I could see Tyler standing where I'd left him, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand chopping at the air between us, punctuating words I couldn't hear. Danny's phone was still recording. The other workers watched Tyler the way you watch someone who's just realized they've made a mistake they can't take back. I sat at my desk. The 1985 photograph looked back at me. Jim and I shaking hands in front of the empty building, both wearing work shirts, both smiling. Tyler's voice carried through the closed door, muffled but audible. He was still trying to explain the situation to his attorney, still trying to understand how the man he'd just fired in front of 40 people could own the company he thought he controlled. I pulled out my yellow notepad and added a timestamp, 10:23 a.m. Public termination attempt completed. Subject: unaware of actual ownership structure. 97 minutes until shareholder vote. Through the window, I watched Tyler pace in front of the conference room. 4 steps left, turn, 4 steps right. His Italian loafers clicked against the floor in a rhythm that never varied. His phone stayed locked to his ear. His free hand kept adjusting his glasses. The workers began drifting back to their stations. Machines hummed to life. The normal factory sounds returned, covering Tyler's voice until I couldn't hear him anymore. I set down my pen and looked at the photograph. Jim would have understood. We'd built this together on a handshake and equal opportunity. I'd chosen shares while his family chose boats. That wasn't betrayal. That was just understanding what partnership meant. Tyler's phone rang at 10:30. He answered on speaker while pulling files from his laptop. His family attorney's voice filled the conference room. "I've reviewed your grandfather's will." Tyler's fingers froze on the keyboard. Papers rustled on the other end. Section 4 grants you operational authority over manufacturing operations and personnel decisions. So I had the right to terminate Stan. You had authority to make personnel decisions. That's not the same as ownership control. What's the difference? The attorney paused. Did you verify the current ownership structure before terminating him? Tyler's jaw muscles tightened. The will says I have operational authority. That doesn't answer my question. Did you pull the corporate filings, check the shareholder register, review the stock transfer records? I assumed the partnership was still 50-50. My grandfather built this company. Your grandfather co-founded it 33 years ago. That tells me nothing about who owns what today. The attorney's voice sharpened. What did Stan mean when he said he owns 68%? Tyler looked at the door to Stan's office. The blinds were closed. He showed me some certificate from 1985. Claims he's been converting bonuses to shares. For how long? I don't know. He said something about 120 transfers. The line went quiet. Tyler counted 7 seconds before the attorney spoke again. That's 30 years of quarterly conversions. You need to stop this meeting right now. Call him and negotiate a settlement before 2 o'clock. I'm not negotiating with a factory floor manager who's trying to extort the family. Tyler, listen carefully. If Stan owns 68% of the company, he's not a manager. He's the majority shareholder. You work for him, not the other way around. Tyler ended the call. His phone screen showed 10:45, 75 minutes until Michelle was supposed to arrive with the audit findings. He pulled up the email she'd sent Friday. Subject: Preliminary findings. Equity structure review. The body contained 2 sentences. Found irregularities in ownership documentation that require immediate discussion. Available Monday at your request. He'd read it as confirmation that Stan had taken unauthorized bonuses. Accounting cleanup, nothing more. Now he read it again. Irregularities in ownership documentation. Not bonus documentation. Ownership. He called Michelle's cell. She answered on the second ring. I need you here now, not at 1 now. I'm 40 minutes away. Drive faster. She arrived at 11:25. Tyler met her at the entrance and walked her to the conference room without speaking. She set her laptop bag on the table and pulled out a manila folder an inch thick. You said irregularities, Tyler said. Explain them. Michelle opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of stock transfer certificates arranged in chronological order. She spread them across the table in rows of 10. These are copies of every equity conversion filed with the Ohio Secretary of State since 1985. 120 total transfers. Tyler picked up the first certificate. The paper was white copy stock, but the document it reproduced showed age. Signatures in blue ink. A raised seal from the state. September 23, 1985. James Garrison Sr. and Stanley Novak, 50% each. Michelle tapped the ownership percentages. That's how the company started. She picked up the second certificate. December 28, 1985. Fourth quarter bonus distribution. Your grandfather took $8,400 in cash. Stan converted $8,400 to shares at $1.05 per share based on the book value formula. That's 8,000 shares. She set it down and moved to the third certificate. March 15, 1986. First quarter 1986. Same pattern. Jim takes cash. Stan converts. Ownership shifts again. Tyler watched her work through the timeline. Q2, 1986. Q3, 1986. Q4, 1986. Each certificate showed the same dual signature. James Garrison Sr. approving the conversion. Stanley Novak receiving additional shares. "This can't be legal," Tyler said. Michelle looked up from the documents. "Why not? He was supposed to take cash bonuses like my grandfather did." The partnership agreement gives both partners the option to convert bonuses to equity. Section 7.3. I have a copy if you want to read it. She produced a stapled document from the folder. Tyler scanned the first page. The language was clear. Either partner could elect to receive quarterly bonuses as cash distribution or equity shares at book value determined by independent accountant. "Equal opportunity for both partners," Michelle said. "Your grandfather chose cash. Stan chose shares. That continued for 30 years. Tyler counted the rows of certificates. 12 rows of 10. 120 quarters. Correct. The Garrison family received $4.7 million in cash distributions over that period. Stan converted $4.7 million in bonuses to equity shares. What are those shares worth now?" Michelle pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. Based on annual revenue of $40 million, conservative valuation multiples suggest Stan's 68.4% stake is worth approximately $21 million. Tyler sat down. The conference room glass showed the factory floor. Workers at their stations, machines running, everything normal. Everything except that the man he'd fired 2 hours ago owned $21 million of a company. Tyler thought he controlled the book value formula. Tyler said, could he have manipulated the pricing to get shares cheap? The formula was established in the original 1985 partnership agreement. Annual calculation by external accountant. Both partners had access to the same pricing. If the shares were undervalued, your grandfather could have purchased them at the same rate. But he didn't. No. He took cash every quarter for 30 years. Tyler picked up the first certificate from 1986, then 1987, then jumped to 1998. The signatures looked shakier. The ink faded brown. Jim's handwriting looser. Stan's unchanged. The state filing stamp dated June 15, 1998. The door opened at 12:15. Rita Feldman walked in carrying a fireproof document case. She was 67, wearing a navy suit and low heels. She looked at Stan's office, then at Tyler. "Mr. Garrison." She set the case on the table. "You need to explain what's happening here." Rita opened the case. Inside were manila folders arranged vertically, each labeled with a year. She pulled out the folder marked 1985 and removed a document protected in a clear archival sleeve. Original stock transfer certificate. September 23, 1985. Filed with the state September 30th, 1985. James Garrison Sr. and Stanley Novak, 50% ownership each. She set it on the table with the care of someone handling historical artifacts. The paper inside the sleeve had yellowed at the edges. Both signatures were visible through the plastic. The state seal was embossed, raising the surface in a circle of texture. "This is the founding document," Rita said. "Everything that follows derives from the authority established here." She pulled the next folder. 1986. 4 certificates, 1 per quarter, each in its own protective sleeve, each bearing Jim's signature approving the conversion, each stamped with the state filing date within 30 days of the conversion date. Tyler watched her work through the years. 1987, 1988, 1989. The folders came out in sequence. The certificates spread across the table in chronological rows that Michelle's copies had previewed. But these were originals. The paper showed age. The ink had faded to brown in places. The state seals were raised and tactile. Every conversion approved by both partners, Rita said. Every transfer filed with the state within statutory requirements. Every document notarized by me as registered agent. 30 years of continuous, transparent, legally executed equity transfers. Why didn't anyone tell the family this was happening? Tyler's voice came out thin. The documents are public record. Anyone can access corporate filings through the Secretary of State's office. Your family had the same access I did. We didn't know to look. Rita positioned another certificate. 1998, June quarter. This is the year your grandfather and Stan amended the partnership agreement to allow emergency shareholder votes. Why? Your uncle's husband attempted to divert company funds to a personal real estate investment. Jim and Stan added a provision allowing any majority shareholder to call binding votes with 48 hours notice when fiduciary duty is breached. Tyler's phone buzzed. He ignored it. That provision can't apply here. I had operational authority. You had authority to make operational decisions within the scope of approved budgets. Diverting capital equipment funds to marketing consultants exceeded that authority. Tyler stood. His chair screamed against the floor. He was standing before he realized he'd moved. This whole thing is a setup. He's been planning this for years. He's been documenting his equity accumulation for 33 years, Rita said. That's not a setup. That's record keeping. She pulled another folder from the case. Here's the 1998 amendment, adding the emergency vote provision. Your grandfather's signature, Stan's signature, filed July 20th, 1998. The scenario you created this morning is what they anticipated when they added this protection. Tyler picked up his phone. 3 missed calls from his mother, 2 text messages asking what was happening with the factory. There has to be a way to challenge this. The conversions, the formula, something. Rita closed the document case. Challenge on what grounds? I don't know. You're the lawyer. Find something. But conversions were at fair market value as determined by your grandfather's chosen accountant. The formula was established by mutual agreement in 1985. Every transfer was approved by both partners and filed with the state in accordance with Ohio corporate law. Your grandfather signed 120 approval documents over 30 years. She spread 3 certificates from different decades. Jim's signature on each conversion approval. You're challenging his competence? No. Are you claiming the book value formula was manipulated to disadvantage your family? Tyler scanned the spreadsheet Michelle had left open. Book value, $1.05, $1.18, $1.34. Each year higher than the last. Formula, assets minus liabilities divided by outstanding shares. The same formula his grandfather's accountant had used. Standard, consistent. I don't know if it was or not. Michelle turned her laptop screen toward him. I reviewed the book value calculations for all 30 years. The formula is standard and consistently applied. If anything, it slightly favored your family because increasing company value meant later conversions acquired fewer shares for the same dollar amount. Rita continued. Are you claiming Stan concealed these transfers? Tyler gestured at the certificates covering the table. My family didn't know about them. That's not the same as concealment. These documents are public record. Every transfer was filed with the Secretary of State within 30 days. Anyone with internet access can pull corporate ownership records. We didn't think to look. Your family's failure to exercise basic due diligence doesn't create legal grounds to challenge transparent, properly documented transfers that your grandfather approved 120 separate times. Tyler's phone showed 12:47, 73 minutes until the meeting started. "What if I don't attend?" he said. Rita closed the document case. The latches clicked. 2:00. Conference room. Stan holds 68.4%. Simple majority passes any resolution. She stood. "With or without you?" Tyler looked at the certificates spread across the table. 30 years of accumulation laid out in paper sequence. His grandfather's signature on every quarterly approval. The state filing stamps making each transfer official and permanent. "I'm calling my family. They need to know about this before 2:00. He left the conference room. Through the glass, I watched him pace the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear. His free hand chopped at the air, punctuating whatever he was saying to whoever had answered. Rita began returning certificates to their folders, working backward through the decades. Michelle closed her laptop. "He doesn't understand yet," Rita said. "Understand what?" Rita slid the last folder into the case and locked the latches. "That this meeting isn't about whether Stan owns the company. It's about what happens now that Tyler tried to fire the person who does."
I walked into the conference room at 1:58. Tyler had returned to the conference room at 1:30, taking the chair at the far end where Rita had positioned him. Rita sat in the corporate secretary position with the fireproof case open beside her, documents arranged in chronological stacks. Michelle had her laptop positioned to face the table, red recording light visible in the screen's corner. His Italian loafers showed under the table edge. His rimless glasses needed cleaning. The brick red flush from this morning had faded to gray. The glass walls showed the factory floor. Both shifts. Machines running at half speed because 40 workers had found reasons to stand where they could watch. Danny stood near the CNC bay with his phone at chest height. I took the seat at the head of the table, the same position Tyler had claimed 3 months ago when he stopped sitting beside me and started sitting where he thought he belonged. Rita opened her notebook. Shareholder meeting of Precision Tool and Die Incorporated. Called to order at 2 p.m., November 14th. Corporate Secretary Rita Feldman, recording. Independent Observer Michelle Tran, verifying procedural compliance. She looked at me. I nodded. Stanley Novak, majority shareholder, 68.4%. Tyler Garrison, representing Garrison Family Trust, 31.6%. Rita adjusted her reading glasses. Mr. Novak filed emergency meeting notice at 9:47 a.m. today citing breach of fiduciary duty. Your meeting, Stan. I pulled the original partnership agreement from the folder in front of me. The paper had gone brittle at the edges. Jim's signature and mine filled the final page above Rita's notarization from September 1985. Section 7.3. Quarterly bonus distributions may be taken as cash or converted to equity shares at book value determined by external accountant. Equal opportunity for both partners. I set the agreement on the table where Tyler could see it. Jim and I shook hands on 50-50. That photograph's still on my desk. We both earned the same bonuses every quarter for 30 years. He took cash. I took shares. Rita pulled the first stock certificate from its protective sleeve. September 1985. Foundation document establishing equal ownership. Both signatures clear under the state filing stamp. She set it on the table where Tyler could see it. Then the second certificate, December 1985. Then March 1986. 120 quarterly transfers. Every conversion approved by both partners. Every transfer filed with the state within 30 days. Every document notarized and stamped. The certificates spread across the table in rows. Tyler's grandfather's signature on each approval. The state filing stamps making each conversion permanent. Through the glass, Carlos worked the manual lathe. Jenkins stood by the CNC machines. Names I'd known for 15 years, some for 20. Jim would know this. 50-50 partnership meant both of us earning our half every day. I chose to build equity while his family bought boats. That's not betrayal. That's just knowing what ownership requires. Tyler's fingers went to his collar button. He didn't speak. Current ownership summary. I placed the document Rita had prepared on top of the certificate stacks. Stanley Novak, 68.4%. Garrison Family Trust, 31.6%. Majority control grants authority on management decisions per Section 12.1. Michelle typed something on her laptop. First vote. I kept my voice level, the same tone I'd used for 30 years when explaining production schedules or quality metrics. Termination of Tyler Garrison for breach of fiduciary duty. Budget reallocations without board approval. Personnel decisions violating aerospace quality certification requirements. Rita looked at Tyler. Mr. Garrison, do you wish to address the charges? Tyler's jaw muscles worked. He opened his mouth, closed it. His hand moved toward his phone, then stopped. No, he said. Vote on termination for cause, Rita said. Mr. Novak, 68.4% in favor. Mr. Garrison, 31.6% against. Rita turned a page in her notebook, pen moving across the line. Motion passes. Tyler Garrison is terminated for cause. No severance per section, 14.2, governing removal for fiduciary breach. Through the glass, Danny's phone stayed steady. The workers hadn't moved. They'd seen this coming since 10:17 this morning when Tyler told me to clean out my desk. Second vote, I said. Revocation of operational authority previously granted to Tyler Garrison through James Garrison Sr.'s will. Reassignment of manufacturing operations, personnel decisions, and budget authority to majority shareholder. Tyler stood. His chair scraped against the floor. You can't do this. Section 12.4. Rita turned another page. Majority shareholder holds operational control unless specifically delegated by written board resolution. Your grandfather's will granted authority. It didn't remove the board's power to revoke that grant. Tyler's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, looked at the screen, then set it face down on the table. Vote on operational authority transfer, Rita said. Mr. Novak, 68.4% in favor. Mr. Garrison? He stared at the certificates covering the table. His grandfather's signature on every quarterly approval. 30 years of choices that had seemed insignificant at the time. 31.6% against. Motion passes. Rita closed her notebook. Stanley Novak assumes direct operational control. Meeting adjourned at 2:13 p.m. I stood. Tyler hadn't moved from his position beside the chair. "This factory needs real leadership." I used his exact words from this morning. "Let them settle in the air between us. Security will escort you to your vehicle. Your parking pass is revoked. Company laptop and phone need to be surrendered." Tyler's face lost all color. The tan looked artificial against the sudden pallor. His lips moved, but no sound came out. 2 security officers appeared at the conference room door. Martinez and Chen, the same team who'd escorted the consultant out last month. "Mr. Garrison." Martinez held out his hand. "Company property, please." Tyler pulled his phone from his pocket, set it on the table, opened his laptop bag, and removed the computer. His fingers shook enough that the laptop case rattled. The officers positioned themselves on either side of him, not touching, just present. The way security handles terminated employees every day in companies across the country. Through the glass, 40 workers watched Tyler walk toward the exit. Danny's phone tracked the movement, recording the same path Tyler had walked this morning when he'd gathered them to witness my firing. Same witnesses, same location, same glass walls, making everything visible. Tyler reached the factory floor door, paused with his hand on the frame, turned back to look at me through the conference room glass. I met his eyes, held them. He pushed through the door and disappeared into the parking lot. The security officers followed 3 steps behind. Rita began returning certificates to their protective sleeves. Michelle closed her laptop. "That went exactly as predicted," Michelle said. Rita smiled. 30 years of documentation tends to produce predictable outcomes. I walked to the window overlooking the factory floor. The machines hummed back to full speed. Workers returned to their stations. Carlos caught my eye through the glass and nodded once. I sat down at my desk. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving something quieter behind. The 1985 photograph still sat on my desk in the next room. Jim and I shaking hands in front of an empty building, both of us believing we were starting something that would last. We had, just not the way his family assumed. Security escorted Tyler from the building at 3:15. Martinez held the door, while Chen carried the cardboard box containing 3 months of personal items. A motivational book Tyler never opened. The wireless keyboard he'd ordered to replace the standard issue model. A framed photograph of himself accepting his MBA diploma. I watched through my office window. Tyler's Italian loafers clicked across the parking lot in the same rhythm they'd made this morning when he paced while trying to explain the situation to his attorney. His car was parked in the visitor section now. Someone had removed his reserved spot placard while the shareholder meeting was happening. Danny appeared in my doorway. "Recording's already moving," he said. "Where?" "Sent it to my brother at the Cleveland plant." He forwarded it to his floor supervisor. "That guy knows half the operations managers in the state." I turned from the window. Tyler's car pulled out of the lot, brake lights flashing red before disappearing around the corner. "Let it go where it goes," I said. That same evening, the recording had reached 12 people through text chains. I knew because Danny's phone kept buzzing with replies. Workers asking if the video was real. Suppliers wanting confirmation. A quality manager from an aerospace contractor asking what happened to the grandson. By morning, 43 people had seen it. Danny showed me the view count on the file hosting service where someone had uploaded it. The title read, "Factory Manager Fires His Own Boss." Rita called Tuesday morning at 8:30. "Ohio Manufacturing Alliance is talking about your situation," she said. "How'd they hear?" "Ed Morrison runs the precision shop in Akron. His nephew works your second shift. The video made it to Ed by midnight." Ed Morrison had been running manufacturing operations for 32 years. He sat on the Alliance Safety Committee and had walked me through my first aerospace audit back in 1987. What's he saying? That the kid had it coming. That documentation beats entitlement every time. That more people should watch their filing cabinets instead of their stock portfolios. I hung up and pulled up Tyler's LinkedIn profile. The banner image showed him standing in front of our factory entrance, arms crossed. His headline, Manufacturing Operations Executive, Transformational Leader, Change Agent. The post from Friday was still visible. Sometimes leadership means making hard decisions that people with limited perspective can't understand. The market has moved on, and if we don't move with it, we're obsolete. Someone had commented, "This aged well." By Wednesday, Tyler's consulting firm released a statement. I found it through a manufacturing trade publication's daily email digest. The firm regretted that a former associate had taken independent actions inconsistent with the firm's commitment to thorough due diligence and stakeholder analysis. The firm scrubbed his profile from their alumni page. Danny brought me coffee Thursday morning. "Tyler's trying to get a job through his old consulting contacts," he said. "Who told you that?" "My cousin works at the staffing firm that places operations managers." Tyler called them Tuesday. They Googled his name. First result is the video. Second result is a Reddit thread analyzing what he did wrong. I took the coffee. What's the thread saying? That he never verified ownership structure. That he assumed authority from a will meant actual control. That he fired someone in front of 40 witnesses without checking whether that person could fire him back. Michelle called Friday afternoon. I'd been reviewing production schedules when her name appeared on my phone. My accounting practice asked me to document lessons learned from the audit, she said. What are you telling them? That clients who dismiss preliminary findings as paperwork issues usually discover those issues aren't paperwork. 2 weeks after the shareholder meeting, Tyler's mother called Rita. I heard about it that evening when Rita stopped by the factory to drop off updated corporate documents. She wanted to know if there was a way to challenge the ownership transfers, Rita said. What'd you tell her? That her father-in-law signed 120 approval documents over 30 years. That every transfer was at fair market value using a formula he chose. That the family received $4.7 million in cash distributions while Stan converted $4.7 million to equity. Rita set the document folder on my desk. She asked how much your shares are worth now. What'd you say? Approximately $21 million at conservative valuation. Then she asked how much the family spent on boats and vacation homes and whether that money could have bought the same shares you acquired. Could it? Every penny. Equal bonuses, equal opportunities, equal access to the book value formula. They chose consumption. You chose accumulation. By November, Tyler's name appeared in a case study. Danny found it through his nephew, who was finishing an MBA at the same mid-tier program Tyler had attended. The course was Corporate Governance and Strategic Decision-Making. The case title was Understanding Ownership Structure Before Authority Assumptions. The case walked through Tyler's termination attempt, the emergency shareholder meeting, and the documentary evidence that proved my majority control. The teaching notes ask students to identify the critical error. Danny's nephew sent him a photograph of the case study cover page. Tyler's name had been changed to a pseudonym, but the details were exact. Mid-20s MBA graduate assumes control of family manufacturing business. Attempts to terminate long-serving operations manager. Discovers manager owns 68% of company. Gets fired by the person he tried to eliminate. I filed the photograph with the other documents from that week. Tyler's termination. The shareholder meeting minutes. Rita's ownership verification. Everything dated and organized the same way I'd organized 30 years of stock transfer certificates. 6 months after the shareholder meeting, I heard Tyler was working at a logistics company outside Cincinnati. Operations coordinator role. $58,000 salary. No equity. No decision authority. He reported to a director who'd started as a warehouse worker and spent 15 years learning the business from the floor up. The information came through the same manufacturing network that had circulated Danny's recording. Plant manager knew someone who knew Tyler's current supervisor. They'd asked Tyler during his interview about the gap in his work history. He said he'd left the family business to pursue other opportunities. His supervisor looked him up anyway, found the video, found the Reddit thread, found the case study, hired him for a coordinator role because someone who'd learned that lesson the hard way wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The profile showed his current position. No description, no posts, no activity. His connection count had dropped from 800 to 200. The consulting firm classmates had disconnected. The mid-tier MBA alumni group had removed him from their leadership committee. Danny showed me Tyler's last post, dated 3 weeks after the shareholder meeting. It said, taking time to reassess priorities and explore new directions. Someone had commented, "Is this about the video?" Gee, Tyler never responded. I closed the browser and returned to the production schedule. The aerospace manufacturer had increased their order by 12%. The medical device company wanted to add a second product line. Carlos had trained 2 new operators on the manual lathes Tyler wanted to eliminate. The factory ran the same way it had for 33 years. Documentation in filing cabinets. Quality metrics on clipboards. Workers who knew their machines and understood that championship results required patience measured in decades, not quarters. Tyler was gone. The Garrison family owned 31.6%. I owned 68.4% and the authority that came with it. The handshake from 1985 held. Jim would have understood that. I arrived at the factory at 5:30 on a Sunday morning, 18 months after the shareholder meeting. Same time I'd arrived for 33 years. My 1987 Ford F-150 sat alone in the parking lot. The odometer showed 240,000 miles. The paint had faded to primer in places, but the engine still turned over on the first try. Inside, the oak profit-sharing board hung beside the time clock. Danny had mounted it last week, names carved in brass plates below quarterly profit numbers. 15% of quarterly net profits distributed to workers with 10-plus years tenure. 12 names qualified. Carlos topped the list at 19 years. The manual lathes ran alongside the CNC machines in Bay 4. Tyler's optimization plan would have eliminated both. Revenue was up 12% since last year because aerospace contractors wanted the hybrid approach. Human judgment on critical tolerances, automation for volume work. 12%. Tyler's optimization would have killed that growth. The 1985 photograph still sat on my office desk. Jim and I shaking hands in front of the empty building. We wore matching work shirts and believed we were starting something permanent. We had, just not the way his family assumed. Pulled on my work boots and crossed the yard to the pond behind my ranch house. 6 a.m. Sunlight turned the pond mist to gold. Water droplets caught on my sleeves. The filtration system hummed. I'd tested the chemistry yesterday. pH 7.2, ammonia 0.01, nitrite undetectable. The championship Kohaku surfaced before my shadow crossed the pond edge. 30 inches nose to tail, white body with red patterns that took 17 years to stabilize. Kohaku pattern, tancho placement, perfect edge definition. Regional competition winner last month, worth $30,000 to the right buyer. I'd never sell it, same reason I'd never sold my shares. I scattered pellets across the water. The Kohaku ate from my hand, scales smooth against my palm. 15 years of selective breeding to produce a fish this valuable. The same patience I'd applied to stock certificates. Select the best genetics, document everything, wait for results measured in decades, not quarters. Jim used to ask why I bothered with fish instead of taking the boat out. Long-term thinking meant I owned 68% of a company worth $40 million in annual revenue, and Tyler owned nothing except a LinkedIn profile he'd stopped updating. Danny's text from last night said Tyler was still at the logistics company in Cincinnati. Last I heard, operations coordinator, no equity, no authority, learning from a director who'd started as a warehouse worker. Jim would have understood that 50-50 partnership meant both of us earning our half every day. I chose equity, while his family chose boats. That wasn't betrayal. That was just understanding what ownership required. I walked back across the yard. The driver's door stuck, same as it had for 12 years. I yanked it open and climbed in. Documentation defeats entitlement. Patience compounds into power. Working-class discipline builds permanence that credentials can't touch. The truck started on the first try. Sunday morning light caught the dust on the dashboard. Same truck I'd driven for 35 years because I chose equity over status symbols. I drove toward the factory, windows down, cool air pushing through the cab.